Welcome back to the Authority X Factor podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Schuknecht. And in my book, Unlocking Your Authority X Factor, I talk about how the best brands are built on tricks and trends. They're built on a deep understanding of human behavior and game-changing ideas. Today's guest has spent over 15 years mastering exactly that. Ryan Chuckel is a senior communications and integrated marketing leader who has driven massive growth for brands in categories ranging from food and beverage to marine and automotive. While many in the agency world focus purely on tactics, today's guest brings an entrepreneurial approach and a balanced understanding of the media and influencer landscape to every strategy. He is known for his ability to get the most out of people and for turning high value ideas into long standing client relationships. Today, we're going to talk about how he navigates the complex world of consumer behavior, how he stays ahead of the shifting media landscape, and will uncover the authority X factor that allows him to drive success across such wide variety of industries. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Good to see you. What an intro, man. I have a lot to live up to after all that.
No pressure, no pressure. Well, I want to start us out by digging into your authority X factor. So, your authority X factor, as I define it, is kind of just that unique skill set and the blend of your skills and experiences that have led you to lead clients or to serve clients in the way that you do now. So in my intro I talked a little bit about the industries you serve and what you do a little bit, but how did you get to this point? Like, what is your authority X factor in how you serve your clients?
Yeah, it's an interesting question and I guess it does just innately allow me to talk a little bit about how I got to starting Gunpowder and where we're at with the agency. You know, I've been an agency guy for my entire career and I've just, whether I'm unemployable or just glutton for punishment or whatever it may be, I've had opportunities early on in my career to go client side and I just could never get away from the energy of the agency side. And what I realized is that like the agency world plays to my strengths, and my strengths are really this really super insatiable intellectual curiosity and like a desire and a willingness to learn about my client's business. And even from a young age, when I was just account kid just trying to cut my teeth, I really made it a priority to try to understand not just what I was doing from a communication standpoint and how I was impacting their business, but I wanted to understand how every business operated. And I'm so grateful for my early years of working on what I would consider maybe not the most exciting clients, but such a wide range of clients from healthcare to fitness to technology to travel and tourism. And if you do it right in the agency world, you can get you can get paid to get an MBA if you spend the time and you make the connections within the client organization to understand everything. And I think that's what I've tried to develop over my career is this really strong business acumen. I've actually viewed it as a blind spot in some ways for me to not have been client side at some point because you just have never been in that seat, right? And it's hard when you haven't been in the client's shoes, but I've worked extremely hard to try to put myself on the client side of the table my entire career and beyond the marketing side of the organization. Yeah, I've really created strong inroads and relationships with people in the sales organization, supply chain, executive leadership. And by doing so, I feel like and doing so across a variety of businesses and industries from startups to, growth stage companies to Fortune 100 companies. I've tried to learn as much as I can about how those businesses operate, not from a marketing and demand side perspective solely, but really across the business. And so what I try to bring, and I think I've tried to instill in our team at Gunpowder to bring to every client is that business acumen, understanding our client's business more holistically than just the project we're working on or the singular thing that we're focused on, and not being put in this little cage of agency work that we have to do. And so ultimately, at the end of the day, I feel like I serve the role of business counselor and like confidant, and in some cases get asked to weigh in on things that are well outside of our scope of work or purview. And that I think is what makes our relationship sticky. It's what brings value beyond the implementation work that we're doing. And I guess I would define that, I suppose, in this case, as the X factor.
Yeah, yeah. So you work with so many different industries, and you talked a little bit about your experience, the companies you work with. I One thing I did not mention in the intro is the name of your company is Gunpowder, and I would love for you to explain. So I want to we'll get back into kind of the industries you serve and all of that. I have some
Sure.
questions there, but I would love for you to tell us the reason behind the name Gunpowder. Where did that name come from?
Yeah, it's funny. We used to get asked that a lot and not as much anymore, but it's probably not the most romantic story, but it's so when I started the agency, I had a business partner and we were working on trying to figure out a name for the company. And at no point did we consider last names. We just wanted to try to avoid that, very tired trope. We also wanted something that sort of was action oriented and kind of just had like a bit of energy. And honestly, I kind of wanted something that I don't want to say controversial, but something that just sort of felt like if you didn't like our name and you didn't want to work with us for that reason, then that's maybe a good self selection tool that we just said, okay, if the name gunpowder having the word gun in it offends you, and it wasn't about like, I mean, I'm a hunter, I own guns, doesn't matter. It wasn't like some political stance or nor was it trying to be like in the like hunting industry, which we do work in. It was just a name that I actually talked to my old boss, a guy that I really respect and a couple other people and they were like, "Man, I would not name it that. There are going to be people that are not going to want to work with you." And I was like, "Perfect. That actually makes me feel better about it." And honestly, like there were a lot of them that I liked that just weren't available and we could get the URL and we just went for it.
Yeah,
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 here we are years later. And it's really funny because a lot of people align the name now with just some of the industries we work in. And there are others that I think there are probably times when there are might be a more conservative organization that just says, "Do we want to put the word gunpowder on a press release?" I don't know. Maybe we haven't gotten clients because of it, but the clients that we have embraced the name and the fact that it's like, it's kind of around this idea of igniting action and like kind of being a propellant for business. And it feels a little like almost campy now at this point, but it's just the name that we've got and it's memorable and we love it. So here we
yeah,
are.
yeah. It's funny because, I actually met, uh so my introduction to gunpowder was meeting 2 women who work for you, at
Yeah.
an event, right? And so it's a very masculine, kind of manly
Yeah.
name for a company, right? And so I met these 2 women who were like, "Yeah, I work for Gunpowder." That it was funny, but yeah,
Love it.
I was curious just for myself. I didn't know if it had evolved through like anything like you said, a niche that you worked with or
Yeah.
anything like that. But it really wasn't that. It's just the name that you came up with, and um, I wouldn't say that it's offensive at all, but it does seem like it's very like it's just masculine, and it's like the nature, right? So,
Yeah.
anyways, I like it. I like it. I think it's a strong name.
Yeah. It, It is kind of funny. I mean, most of our leadership team outside of me are all women, and it is a rather masculine name. And it's also just, yeah. So we design all kinds of swag, and people are always wearing gunpowder around. And there was one of the women on our team was getting on a flight, and some lady was like, "You can't wear that shirt on a plane." It's like it's the name of
Oh,
the business I work at. I don't know.
that's
Sorry.
funny. That's
But
funny.
yeah, I don't know. It's yeah, I mean it's strange. Like if I was gonna name the agency now, I'd probably name it something else. Honestly. Like I would just probably not and it's not because I don't like it. It's just like there's probably words or names that would better reflect what we've become. And it's not like I have regrets. It's just like, I don't know, maybe there's a better name, but it's who we are. And
Yeah, it's who you are. I
everybody
like
kind of
it.
loves it. I think it's like any brand. And we talk about branding all the time with clients and naming comes up all the time. And
Yeah,
it's my counsel and opinion always that like the name is less important than the culture and the brand that you build around it and what it stands for because of the things that you do, the way that you act, the way that you communicate. So I think we built a brand for gunpowder that probably goes beyond, elevates it beyond the name to a degree and takes it to a different place. But
yeah.
yeah, at face value, it's kind of it's a valid question. Where the hell did that come from?
Well, I wanna go back to talking about the industries that you work with, just the diversity there. So I'm
Mhm.
curious about your take on niching down. So, in the marketing world, that topic comes up often, like should I work? I mean, like the old statement, right? Like if you're speaking to everyone, you're speaking to no one, right? And so like the advice is often like you should get very, very specific in like who you're targeting with your marketing and be very specific when it comes to your niche, right? And positioning yourself to be a big fish in a small pond kind of thing. But I'm curious about your take on that because it sounds to me like you work with a lot of different industries. So, how have you approached the idea of like your niche or niches that you work with Gunpowder?
Yeah, I mean, when we started the company, I knew that I always enjoyed working in enthusiast categories or categories where you're playing for discretionary income as opposed to, or like discretionary spend, I should say, as opposed to like, I spent a lot of time in the CPG world and and you're selling, a brand of hot dogs and everybody's going to buy hot dogs. You're trying to get them to choose a hot dog or toothpaste or beer. And there's something there's a real learning that comes from that, right? That those competitive categories that are with really well entrenched players that have sophisticated approach to marketing. And I looked at the enthusiast categories that I always loved working in. So we had GoPro as a client at my old agency. We worked with tourism boards and like kind of worked in these more kind of discretionary categories. And I just loved that work. I felt like I felt more connected to the work. I felt like the people we worked with were happier in their jobs. And it just was honestly more enjoyable. And then I saw an opportunity because like these enthusiast categories, a lot of people work in them as marketers because they love the category and not necessarily because they're a great marketer. And that's not to take anything away from anyone in particular. I just think these categories that are these kind of enthusiast categories tend to be a bit underserved on the agency side. And at the time, there were a lot of these relic agencies that had just been in the categories. They were entrenched. They weren't bringing some of the more advanced strategy and like creative thinking that I felt like they deserved and would benefit from. And so we kind of set out to work in those categories. But as any agency in the early days, you kind of take whatever you can get because it's like we need to grow, we need revenue. We
Right.
have people, we need to keep them busy. And so we got caught in that trap for a couple years where we did work in some categories that just was not a great fit. And it probably cost us some people. It probably cost us some time and some growth. And so when we made the commitment to say, we're going to work in categories that are, how we define it is clients and brands that play for share of heart, not just share of wallet. And that could be said probably about a lot of companies or brands, but in the categories we're in, we work with like a big RV company, like the biggest RV manufacturer in the world. Like, we're not selling against necessarily people buying an RV from another company. We're selling against the fact that these people are choosing to either buy an RV or put in a swimming pool or take 2 extra trips or buy a boat. And so when we think about it in that regard, and every category that we're in is the same, it is really defining for the kinds of clients that we will work with. And so while we work across a variety of categories, the consistent thing that we try to maintain is we're not working with brands that are selling something that people necessarily need, that they require to live, but it's things that people want. And so we're working to build brand desirability and connection and community as opposed to like a more transactional relationship. And once we put that in place, it really allowed us to be selective about the clients that we take on. And it does have like we are in categories that we are, I mean, arguably like the best in some of the outdoors categories that we participate in. But it also opens aperture to travel and tourism, right? Like if you're going to take a trip, that's money that you could spend on buying a boat or, something for your backyard or whatever. And so it's wide enough for us to have a huge range of clients that we could work with, but it's also defined enough that it doesn't force us to put people on work that they didn't sign up for. And that was a trap that I saw at other agencies where it was like, one second you're working on Miller High Life and you're having fun and you're doing Super Bowl work. And then the agency goes and gets the National Association of Funeral Owners, funeral home owners. And it's like, we're shifting you over here. And then that really enthusiastic person who was fired up about working in the beer business is now like left to something completely different. And I think for us, when we shift somebody from a really fun enthusiast client to another fun enthusiast client, maybe in a different category, it's an easy transition and people love the clients that we have. And that is, I think, a huge part, as we know, like human capital is the only thing we really have as agencies, outside of processes and brand or whatever, but it's just, we need people, we need them to be happy and driven and motivated and fulfilled. And I find that like when you keep a consistent type of client, it helps a ton with
Mhm.
retention and yeah, all that.
Yeah. Um, so it's I mean, that's really an interesting it is a niche, but it's a different way of looking at niche or
Yeah,
your industry that you work with. It's a almost like you talk about like house of brands or branded house, right? It's like a house of brands when it comes to your niche, right? Like it's all these different
yeah,
kinds of industries, but like all with kind of a similar under similar umbrella. I like that. Well, so you mentioned 2 things I wanna dig into a little bit. So,
yeah.
one is you mentioned how, like, when you're starting out, like, you kinda have to take everything that comes your way, and then you also mentioned how, I think your wording was like, "We get to be selective about who we work with," right? And so
Yeah.
how did you what was the progression of that? Like, how do you go from kinda taking what comes your way to being able to be selective? Like, what was the process for you in growing Gunpowder to get to that point where you were able to be selective of who you wanna work with.
Um, just doing it, honestly, just committing to it. And that's the hardest thing because I mean, we took on a client. Honestly, it was probably like one tough lesson that just changed our mind. So we took on a client that was running a big racing program. And we've done a lot in automotive performance and kind of sports marketing, but it was like a financial technology firm that wasn't really the kind of I mean, it was a big contract and a huge, interesting work. In my heart, I knew that like the client and what we were selling and what we were ultimately like working to drive business around was not great alignment with our business. And it turned out to not be. And we learned that the hard way. And so we had it was a difficult relationship. We had somebody leave. We had new people come on. They were not happy. And we ended up parting ways with that client. And at that time, I said, listen, I told the team, I brought in everybody and I said, listen, I need you guys to buy in and I need everybody to believe that this is the right path. And I understand it could mean some lean times here, but we need to commit to this. And it's going to mean that like, we're going to say no to things that financially make a lot of sense, but I need you to trust me and believe that if we do this the right way, that we will define ourselves in a better way and it will lead to the kind of work, more of the kind of work that we all want to do. There was a lean year or 18 months that we just, we kind of had to make some difficult choices. I think we even may have laid a couple people off and we had to kind of rebuild. And honestly, it's kind of like anything. It's like if you commit to it and you think our commitment to it, and then the fact that we just said, when we get a client in this category, we have to absolutely crush it because we're narrowing our field, right? So we can't afford any failures. We've got to do our best work on every single thing we do. Not that I necessarily think we were making sacrifices beforehand, but it just put extra pressure on us because like our aperture's narrowed. So we just have to be the best at these categories. And that commitment has paid off. It has not always been easy. We have turned away work that like probably would have been profitable and helpful to our bottom line. But it also has really allowed us to define ourselves as a brand. And even when our people go out and talk about our company, like it's pretty consistent and that's huge. Like everybody knows what we're here for. Everybody's signed up for the same thing. And I'm proud of the fact that we just haven't wavered from it. But yeah, I think it was just making the decision and leaning in and saying like, we're just not, we will make some sacrifices in the near term for the long-term benefit and just great people working the plan.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, it's good to as a fairly newer agency myself, it's good to know that there is a point where you can start doing that. I know
Yeah.
for me, it has been a lot of like taking what you can get, right? And one of my
Yeah.
clients has a motto that's like the no asshole rule. Like we won't work with
Yep.
assholes, you know. And I keep telling my team, I'm like, we're gonna get to the point where like we get to say that too, but right now we're not there.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is like, it's what, what I will say too, the other thing that's helped us a lot is we have a couple cornerstone clients in these enthusiast categories that we've fostered incredible relationships with. Our team is like embedded, and those cornerstone clients have allowed us to have expertise and credibility in the categories we're in. And so without those, I think it would be harder for us to stick to our guns,
Yeah.
and so I don't want to discount that, like having great clients, and we worked hard to establish those relationships and
Yeah.
then to foster and maintain them. But those help a lot. And I don't want to say like, I know for like where you're at with your business, it's like you're going to find your lane. You will. And it's some people take more time. Yeah, some agencies take longer than others. It took us, I mean, we're 11 years old. I would say the first 5 years, we were really trying to find ourselves, and it was frustrating for me. Like, it was a lot of times when I enjoyed it. I enjoyed building the business, and we had some great people, but it didn't really honestly get fun until we defined it and we had the right people in the right seats to execute against the vision. And it wasn't all me, there were other
Yeah.
people that were in leadership seats driving important parts of the business that I wasn't as good at. And so I don't know, it's a journey. It's a journey, but it's like it's so rewarding when it comes together. And yeah, you'll get there. And it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
every I always look at every client as a learning opportunity because
Yeah.
there's always a beginning and there's always an end. Like, it does not matter how great the relationship is, whatever. And so it's like every try to tell the team, like every little chapter of every client relationship is something that you learn from. And if you can, yeah, you're going to learn a lot in the first few years of doing it. And it's going to
Yeah.
make you and your team and all that. And it's just like, it all adds up to like just such a valuable experience level that you just can lean into what you eventually become.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm
For
excited for
sure.
you. That's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so I was gonna ask you how old Gunpowder
Yeah.
was. So you just said 11
Yeah.
years. And what did you do prior to Gunpowder then?
So as I mentioned, I've been in the agency world my whole life. I worked at an agency in the Milwaukee area, and then I helped
Okay.
start a PR group for a little agency that was starting up in the Milwaukee area as well. And then my friend was starting an agency out of Chicago, and basically the foundational client there was Miller Brewing, all the PR work for Miller Brewing. And we built that to a high level of success in a short period of time. We brought on a bunch of great people. We took on all the Miller work and the Coors work when they merged, and Wrigley and Kraft Heinz, and lots of big, exciting work. And then we sold that. And then the private equity company that was rolling those up sold the whole thing. And at that point, we had kind of become what we had sold against for all those years of being kind of that high growth, fun, exciting creative agency. And it was just a great time to go look for the next chapter. So yeah,
Gotcha.
agency guy, just been lots of great experiences and grinding it out.
Okay. So I wanted to just kind of like paint that picture a little bit because one of the questions, my last
Yeah.
question that I ask is if you were to speak to your day one you, so that you, and that's why I wanted to understand like your journey there. So day one you, let's say being the day that you decided to start Gunpowder, right? So you had all that
Yeah.
agency experience prior to that, but like kind of in all these different things, right? But then you decided to start Gunpowder. So now you look back at 11 years ago and you mentioned the first 5 years being kind of a challenge and, trying to figure out who you were exactly and how you wanted to move forward. What advice would you give to yourself on that day one version of you from what you know now?
Make the scary decisions quicker. Yeah. It's just, and a lot of those decisions are people related. Right. So there was a period of time within our agency when we had really smart, great people and in the absolutely wrong role and they just weren't a great fit. And we tried so hard to make that work and it doesn't. And I still have to remind myself that all the time. Like, we've been very fortunate, probably the last few years, we've just had a very stable group of people that have been bought in, growing in their careers, like leaning in. So I haven't really had to remind myself of this recently, but there are times in a human business, a service business like this, when you just have to make really difficult decisions that are going to impact your business and someone's life. And it's not always about like laying people off. It's just about like putting them in a different role or thinking about the business differently. And it's so hard. It's so hard for me because I really started the business honestly. Like I wanted to have a business that I could, live a great lifestyle, enjoy going to work every day, hopefully, monetize it throughout ownership. And maybe someday, you get an exit. That's great. But ultimately, it was like, I just love this business and I love the categories we're in. I wanted to give other people the opportunity. And I do believe that every day. Like that's part of what I wake up trying to do, but you can't force it. Like just because you love somebody and you respect them and you think they're great, it doesn't mean that you just keep going down the same path with them that isn't working. And it's so absolutely difficult for me to make those decisions. But I would tell myself that's what you just have to do it. I mean, it's the scariest decisions I've ever made, the toughest calls, the toughest conversations. When they're done, you just realize how much better everyone is on the backside
Yeah.
of it. It's like, man, that person that was not happy here and we all knew it, now is doing something amazing with their life. And our
Yeah.
business is better. And there was a little period of difficulty, but everything worked out. And if I'd made that decision sooner, it would have benefited everybody sooner, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's
yeah,
just so hard in the moment. But yeah, that's great advice.
it's hard.
Well,
It's really hard.
Ryan, where can listeners and viewers find you online and learn more about you and Gunpowder?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I promise I'm gonna be more active there because I have not been, but it's like one of my goals for this year. And I've 3 or whatever, 5 months in of not doing great. But so LinkedIn, of course, and then gunpowderinc.com is our website. And yeah, it's a fun. It was just we've got a bunch of our work there and little bit more about us. But those are probably the easiest places to find me. Or, you know, obviously here on this podcast. Hopefully it's been fun. I enjoyed
Yeah.
the conversation.
Yeah. It's been great. You have some great stories to share and some great advice for people who are trying to figure it out, right? Like that's the goal is to help people who are learning their authority X factor and their own path and help them learn from examples like you. So thank you for sharing your story with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's fun.
Thanks for watching. My book, Unlocking Your Authority X Factor, is now available on Amazon. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. See you next week.